Hi, I'm Carrie Larson. In Training Module 1, we covered why safe sanctuaries is needed, core definitions, and began discussing policy guidelines. In Training Module 2, we covered the importance of having a 6-month rule. The 6-month rule is the length of time an active volunteer should be a part of your church before participating in children or youth ministries. In Module 3, we had a lively discussion on the joys and trials of taking youth or children on an overnight event. In Module 4, we discussed transportation considerations. So let's just state the obvious. You never want to counsel a youth or a child behind closed doors. And you never want to visit a youth or a child at home alone. So there are many times that I go over to youth's house and I just want to make sure that their parents' home. I actually arrange it with their parents, like, hey, I just want to come over and say hi and check on them, whatever. But you want to make sure a parent is home. And if you're going into a home, you want to make sure that you're not like sitting in the bedroom having a conversation, but you may want to be in the family room. That may be a conversation with the parent, like, look, can you just be in the kitchen? Like, I would like to have this confidential, but I would like you to be roaming, right? So, and I would think that the parent would be respectful to that. You want to watch your dress and your language, and you just want to make sure that, we were talking about this earlier, social media. Social media is not mentioned in safe sanctuaries, but it should be mentioned with your volunteers. So, you know, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those things, Snapchat. You know, if you're staying relevant with youth, you probably have those apps on your phone. And youth are going to ask you to be your friend. So I would say, number one, make sure that everything is appropriate on your page. Number two, make sure that that's something that you want to open the door to, right? Because opening the door to Facebook and Instagram, your youth or children see your life. And if it's not a life that you want to promote, and not saying that that's good or bad, right? It could be you out drinking with some friends, right? But that may not be the image that you want to promote to youth or children. And so I would just be mindful of that. When you're having conversations with your volunteers, I would tell them that. You know, with texting, I always say log your text, right? So if you have a conversation, and I'm not just talking about hope you're having a good day, happy birthday. I'm talking about a youth texting you saying, look, I just broke up with my boyfriend and I'm, whatever that conversation looks like. If that's going to be a text conversation, I would just take a little picture and save it away. I always post on Facebook. I post messages on their board, so versus a private message. So I never send youth a private message. I always post it on where everyone can see the conversation. That's just, again, a personal preference. You know, technology is quickly changing, and so there's a lot of technology that youth know that I don't even know, and I think I'm up on technology. But it's just a way to safeguard those conversations of what that looks like between you and the youth. And I know there was a question in the back.
Yes, I was just wondering, I know you kind of covered it with texting, but about a child calling you, or a youth calling you, is that, what's the policy?
Yeah, that's, so when a youth calls you and says whatever that looks like, right? I'm struggling, I've had a bad day. So I do two things. If it's a conversation that I need to seek either guidance from my pastor, or if I need to have a further conversation with a parent, I will write kind of like a conversation log. So I have just a sheet of paper, it's not a paper, but I have an app now on my phone, and I just type it up. What I said, what instruction I gave, what counsel I gave, what the youth's response is, what challenge I gave them. Kids getting an F in English, and I just want to let you know, right? That's not the line I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is harm to yourself or harm to others. And so once that conversation starts, I immediately say, I'm just going to let you know. I'm going to be honest. I know you're struggling, and I know you have hurts and pains, but I can't be the only one who knows this information. So how do you want to communicate that to your parents? And sometimes that's the hardest conversation, because it may be the parents who are the stressors. right? But, and I would say we can have that in a safe environment. I can come over right now, and I can start the conversation. You can start the conversation. However you tell me what that looks like. But I am not going to be the only one that holds that information, right? So that's abuse. That's everything. That's pretty much the whole gamut of stuff I include parents on. And that's just a rule of thumb for me because it takes a village. And so you can't be the only one in the village counseling the youth. And so, we have counseling resources at our church, and I, immediately plug those or a pastoral meeting. But so going back to phone conversations, I log. And it doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be, 50 pages of notes. I simply put what conversation was, what transpired, in quick, simple steps so that I can recall later on down the road, like, no, this is actually what I said because I have it in a note, right? And so I date it and those kinds of things. And again, that may be overprotective on my part. That might be my juvenile probation. You log everything, you write everything. Those of you who are teachers and social workers, that's what we do. But again, that's also safeguarding yourself. It helps me to go back. I don't have a great memory, as you probably can tell. But it helps me go back to that conversation and say, how are you holding yourself accountable? Who have you included in to help you through this process? Middle schoolers, they have issues with friends and girls, and it just is like at that time where things start to unravel. And so I give them a challenge, or if it's a self-injurious behavior, I'll have them write me an email right then and there and say, I want you to commit to not hurting yourself for tonight. It might be, or whatever that issue is, I have them make a commitment. And usually, that's part of that process of counseling. But again, I log it. I log everything. So a little redundant. And after the end of, I keep stuff for maybe a year and a half, and then I just dump it. But it just helps you kind of keep accountability to what that conversation looked like. So, especially, we've talked about youth going home or doing, on retreats. I log that conversation because that's usually a one-on-one. And, I'll say, look, you messed up. Here, here's what you did. You know the rules. And they'll say why they did it, what really happened. And, another thing, if I can just take a pause and say that we often know with teenagers, stories change when they get home. So if I call mom and say, Johnny, bought beer on the retreat and, he broke a rule and I have to send him home. Now, Johnny gets home and says, Mom, that's not what I told Pastor Carrie. I told her that so-and-so bought the beer and I was just in the same room, right? So I don't play that game. When I call parents, I say, you talk to mom, right? You broke the rule. You own up responsibility. So it's your story that's being transposed to parents, not mine. And again, that's maybe a little bit hard, but it has the kid own up to the responsibility. And it really takes ownership on the parent to kind of have that immediate conversation of what that looks like. And then I get on the phone and say, plane, train, or automobile. However that works, it's happening tonight. So, and trust me, like I've sent kids home, and it's just not fair to those who don't break rules, for those who do break rules, that they can just continue on with the retreat. And thankfully, I have not found out anything out after the fact. I've really kind of been on the ends of information, and that again comes back to the checking in hotels. That's really training my volunteers to ask poignant questions, like, how are you guys going to spend your night? What time you going to bed? Are there any plans tonight? There's always one room that orders pizza. That's okay, as long as they're in their room, right? They can stay up all night long as long as they stay in their room. And so, I tell them I'm honest with them because I want them to know that I'm not saying you have to turn the light off at 12 o'clock because I don't know if you're going to turn the light off at 12 o'clock. But what does this look like for you, right? So, sorry, that was a huge digress, but hopefully that answered your question. Okay. All right.